Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fan Appreciation Month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, we begin the countdown to episode 300. Now, what does that mean? I know that a lot of you do know. However, I also know that there are probably some people stumbling on this video have no earthly clue what the hell I'm even talking about. So, allow me to give you a brief summary. A couple of months ago, I gave the viewers 4 movies to vote on to see which one you most wanted to see for episode 300. I have since tabulated everybody's votes, and now it's time to count them down, and naturally we're going to kick off with the movie that came in 4th place with 324 votes. It is a found footage anthology film from 2013. That movie is VHS 2. Now, the first movie in the VHS series was a candidate when I was doing voting for episode 200. And when I watched that, I wound up really enjoying it. Except for one segment that was absolute shit because it fucking went nowhere fast and drug on for 30 minutes. I'm hoping that we don't have a segment similar to that in the sequel. Now, because I enjoyed VHS, I have some high hopes here when it comes to VHS 2. I'm really expecting this thing to be at least halfway decent. However, I do also know the curse that comes with many sequels. This thing could very easily suck balls in a way I've never seen. But the only way I'm going to find out if this thing is good or bad is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out VHS 2. Okay, now that is a really nice touch. Our first tape here is basically looking through somebody who now has a cybernetic camera, eye, and every so often we see him blink. That is a nice fucking touch, guys. I really like that. Okay, guys, well, there is a piece of good news. At least now we know that his fucking camera, eye is waterproof. That is really a good thing to fucking know, guys. In fact, I actually was sort of curious about it. I'm kind of happy that the movie opted to answer that for me. Well, guys, I believe I've noticed a pattern when it comes to the movies in this film series. The second tape we see sucks. It really sucked in fucking VHS 1, and here we just have a premise that would have been fine if it were only about 5 minutes, but it's just dragging on. It's a first person zombie tape because some guy was wearing a helmet cam and was then turned into a zombie. It's really dull, guys, but then again, that's partially because I'm sick of fucking zombies in general. Thank God that fucking tape is done, man. That thing was boring as hell. Oh my God, what the fuck is that? That was looked kind of like a pregnant woman with her belly slit open, but just the cut looked kind of rancid and diseased. God, that was fucking disgusting. Is this seriously all that this final tape is going to be? Is it really just going to be a bunch of stupid kids pranking each other? Because, guys, this is getting really fucking old, and this tape just started a couple of fucking minutes, back. Okay. I don't know what the fuck that noise was, but it hopefully was the noise of this tape getting interesting. Well, guys, that was VHS 2. Let me shut that off. Okay. Well, I guess I should start by comparing it to the first VHS. After all, I have covered, well, I have now covered both of them for this series, might as well see. Is it better than VHS 1? Not really. Honestly, guys, both films are kind of even. Because while I had negatives with the first one, I also have negatives with VHS 2, and they're both totally different sets of negatives, and they seem to just sort of cancel each other out. So ultimately, guys, if you liked VHS, you're probably gonna like VHS 2. God, how? Okay, first of all, I guess I should go into the negatives on this. Because really, guys, the negatives are very, very few in both instances. In the case of the first VHS, the real negative was that second tape ran way too long and was a piece of shit. Here, the issues are well. First of all, damn near every tape seems to want to rely entirely on hands-free filming, which, okay, it is totally clever if you find like a single tape in one of these movies which does it, maybe even two. But mind you, also here the tapes are all a little bit longer, so we only get four as opposed to, what the hell was it, like five, maybe six in VHS. So here it's only about four tapes, and all of them are far longer, which actually means that they can flesh out everything a little bit more, which is always cool. However, every single tape relies on hands-free cameras. Now, with the first tape, it kind of made sense because it was because it was a guy having a camera surgically put into his eye because he lost the eye in a car accident. It's totally cool. It works, and I kind of sort of like the way that they worked with it. In fact, that is probably the best out of everything we see here. That is probably the best tape witnessed in VHS 2. Second one is a dull, boring, tedious zombie film where a bicyclist with one of those stupid like helmet cams is attacked by a zombie, then turns into a zombie himself, and then goes and hassles a birthday party. That's it. The third tape, which is probably second best out of all of these, I'm going to tell you straight away, has to do with a cult. And that one actually does have handheld cameras. However, we see most of it through hidden button cameras, as in basically like people have their shirts buttoned up and like one button is replaced with a camera. Which, okay, I guess that one kind of works, you know. Then again, also, so does the friggin' like bicyclist one. Except I still think it might have been a little bit better if, at least with the cult one, especially since it's supposed to be like a team of journalists or people posing as journalists or something, are basically looking into this really creepy, cult, and they just happen to get there on the day of the mass fucking suicides, which then turns everybody into zombies for some reason, and then a minotaur-looking Satan shows up. It's really kind of odd. But almost all of it is shown through hidden cameras on the buttons of people's shirts. The final tape is just a bunch of kids pranking the older sister of one of these kids, and then aliens show up. It is rather weak. Whole thing is, once more, it's using the exact same camera that was used in the second one, except for most of it is strapped onto a dog's back, again, because it's way too difficult to actually have people holding on to cameras in these things. It really, guys, to me, just kind of sort of seemed like a cheap-ass way of not actually doing found, footage films, but just shooting more for POV films, which are very, very rare to see, but they do happen. I would have liked it more maybe if we had like a tape or two that was based entirely on classic found footage style, where a person has to be holding on to the camera and then has only one free hand to do anything. to me, honestly, that always sort of seems to help add help add a little bit of extra tension, especially when they're dealing with like zombies or ghosts or any of this other shit. You only have one hand to do anything. That honestly, guys, is sort of why movies like Blair Witch and Wreck and Wreck's remake Quarantine worked so well. Quarantine actually was shockingly, watchable. I was kind of surprised since I normally am not a fan of remakes. But see, all of those worked because we had the extra added tension of the character we're following only having one hand because they have to hold the camera with the other. And by taking that completely away in all of these, it kind of sort of cheapens everything as a whole. One other negative I mentioned, or rather one other negative, which I mentioned that 2 of these involved zombies, and I am thoroughly sick to death of zombies, okay? We as a fucking society have got to understand that there is a time and a place for zombies. We don't need them in every goddamned facet of our fucking lives, okay? We do not need zombies in TV shows, movies, video games, music, and everything else you can possibly imagine at once. I really think it's time for everybody to kind of sort of ease back on the zombie throttle a little bit, because half of this movie at one point or another devolves into zombie bullshit, and it gets kind of dull. Now, mind you, I do understand that there are some people who are really big fans of zombie films and zombie everything, and they will have no problem with this. But me, I am thoroughly sick and tired of damn near everything having to have some kind of a zombie attachment. And the sooner that we move past this, the better off I think everything is going to be. Now, Mind you, the third tape does have zombies, but the zombies are not the primary focus. The very fact that this cult is creepy as shit, and that they are trying to birth Satan, and that there's a big mass fucking suicide, that is the big focus, and it works. And it works really, really well. It's just I kind of wish that after everybody had committed, suicide, they didn't all immediately spring up as sprinting zombies. It really seemed kind of pointless and unnecessary. Beyond that, though, guys, everything else here in terms of how a found footage film should be done is done very, very well. In terms of just... Oh, wait, there is one other minor negative that I kind of have to mention here, because the first VHS had kind of sort of prided itself on making it clearly look, like every tape was done with a different kind of camera, and thus everything had a different level of graininess or sharpness or contrast, and it really did look like you were watching a bunch of different tapes shot by different people on different hardware. Here, the only thing we have which shows us that we may be using a different type of camera is that they sometimes would put the overlay over it. The overlay which is only seen through the viewfinder of the fucking camera, where you basically have battery life and record is lit up and all that other shit. You see that pretty much is like your one and only cue that you are looking through a different camera. Everything otherwise looks basically like it's only using 2 types of cameras. I also mentioned the fact that you can clearly see one of those little square helmet cams very clearly in the second and fourth tapes, which to me honestly just felt more like fucking product placement, because I don't know of many brands that go for that perfectly square helmet helmet cam look. In fact, shit, if I actually were to go back and look, I could probably even see the brand name of that fucking camera plastered on it. But anyway, ultimately, guys, it just didn't feel it really didn't feel as authentic as the first one. Which is really, really a shame, because it would have been nice, again, if they would have used, different types of cameras, or put over different sorts of, filters and things, in order to make each tape look different. and they didn't bother to, do that, and it really makes the whole thing feel a little bit rushed. Now that I'm done just sort of talking about the big negatives, why don't I talk about the actual elements of this movie? Writing. The writing, guys. Well, first of all, because it's a found footage film, I really can't talk about writing as a solid static thing, because there's a very strong chance that a whole lot of this was probably improv in order to make the whole thing feel a little bit more real, which makes sense. I am all for that. But this time then, when we talk about writing, we're actually talking about the story and exactly how everything is laid out. And everything is laid out rather, well. In fact, hell, guys, as much as I can dump on the second tape because I'm so sick and tired of zombies, it is certainly a clever way of giving us a first-person view of zombies. Granted, honestly, they are the sprinting, fucking running, zombies in instead of the shambling ones that are actually threatening. It is still sort of clever, and that is something which ties into the writing, because the writer had to come up with, why don't we just make it a bicyclist who has a helmet cam? So I honestly can give them points there. It's just kind of wish that that tape was handled a little bit better. Overall, guys, whenever it comes to story, everything here is done really well, including the two tapes that are kind of weak. They still have a really strong premise to them. I just wish that they did more with it. Acting, once more, since this is a found footage film, almost all of it is probably improv, and the improv is done rather well. And what few bits were probably very heavily scripted, such as I'm going to assume that the cult leader's big speech he gives as his entire congregation are going through with their mass suicide. That whole speech was probably very heavily scripted, and it works. And the actor gives that speech very, very well. And also everyone who is doing the improv, they actually have to sound realistic as they do it, and all of them are able to nail that, including every single one of the kids in the fourth tape. One thing, though, I have to comment whenever it comes to acting, especially since, again, mostly fucking improv, I'm going to assume, is in that fourth tape. Of course, when you ask kids to improv, the very first thing which they're going to do, without question, is they are going to swear as often as possible, even if it doesn't sound right, even if it doesn't flow, correctly. When you give children free reign to say anything and everything which they want, it is going to invariably boil down to nothing but non-stop swearing, and it ultimately sounds kind of stupid. That is kind of the one issue when you are trying to improv things, and I swear to God, if any of that was scripted in the fourth tape, that fucking writer should be ashamed. Anyway, writing here is, story. The story here for each tape is certainly sound, and the acting here is done really, really well. The camera work, now the camera work for a found footage film is normally supposed to be really good, and that's normally because everybody has a handheld camera on them, and since they opted to take all of that away, again, it ultimately kind of sort of cheapens the very feeling of a found footage film. However, though, the camera work here is still halfway decent. It just isn't the usual shaky shaky mess that comes with many other found footage films, which is kind of what I was looking forward to. However, though, that also is a positive for people who aren't fans of shaky cam, there isn't a whole lot of that here, which is certainly good for a ton of you. Now, lighting here is all, natural lighting, because, you want it to look as realistic as possible, so, that totally works, and that is awesome. The sound mix here is really good. I also really liked the touch when when a camera gets damaged, you will actually hear the audio begin to fade out a little bit, or the audio is going to come in muffled, or they really went the extra mile to make certain that the sound mix sounded totally authentic, and I have to give them total props for that. So when all is said and done, I'm able to recommend VHS 2. If you really liked the first one, sure. If you have never seen the first one, you might actually want to give this thing a view. If you are not a fan of found footage films, well, if you honestly were not a fan because of the mountains of fucking shaky cam, then by all means go ahead and check out this thing. However, if you just don't like the general premise of found footage films, then naturally you are going to want to avoid this. Myself, I actually had fun with it. I mean, okay, yes. We had fucking two tapes which kind of sucked, but we had two of them that were incredibly strong. So plus also the two of them that are also kind of weak are also probably going to grow on me when I give this thing a second or even a third viewing. So frankly, I can totally recommend this thing as long as you're a fan of found footage films. If you for any reason have a strong hatred of found footage, again, besides hatred of shaky cam, then you're guys, if you are not a fan of found footage, I've already said this, then you're not going to want to watch this. And if you've never seen VHS, go right ahead and check out this thing. But I would also recommend you go and watch the first one, because the first one is still pretty good. Now, because this is Fan Appreciation Month, VHS 2 came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in is a YouTuber by the name of TRC2 Rock On, and dude, thank you. I have been really curious about checking out VHS 2 ever since I watched VHS 1. And seeing as on how both films, even though the both of them have their negatives are still rather strong, I would totally be up for seeing like a third or potentially even a fourth film in this series, as long as the movies are made, well. I mean, because, okay, now this one here, as I stated, it kind of sort of had a couple issues involving the fact that nobody actually is willing to carry a fucking camera in these. It would be really nice if we could go back to that in the third and fourth, like actually go back to people having to carry around cameras, because to me that actually kind of sort of makes the whole experience better. But hey, I honestly have no idea if they are going to put out a third or a fourth film in the series. It would be really nice. However, though, if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't happen, you know what? We still have two really solid films, and that is perfect for me. So anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.